morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Somebody knew what they were doing when they scheduled us like this. It's a perfect segue. My job here today is very simple. We heard a statistic earlier today about 5% of media budgets are spent on social media marketing. So my job is to tell you that yes, that's the right number, no, it's too high, or no, it's too low. And we're going to do that by focusing on social media ROI. And what I want to do is focus on 3 myths that will actually prevent marketers from helping you to understand what social media ROI is. And then I'll give you the mentality that undergirds those myths, and then the reality that you need to follow in order to help understand what the ROI of social media is. So that's my job here today. So you've invested your marketing dollars in social media, or you're considering doing so. And you need to know, as a marketer, who did you reach? You need to know what business outcomes did it drive. Was there a lift in preference, in your brand perceptions, in purchase and sales? Overall, you need to know what was the impact. Did it affect purchase behavior in stores? And very importantly, how did it integrate with the rest of your channels, the rest of your media marketing mix? The 3 myths that I want to talk with you about today are as follows. Measuring likes and followers equals social media ROI. We've heard a little bit about this theme in the past couple panels. The second myth is that the way you determine ROI for social media is the same as traditional media like TV and digital. And the third myth is that social media should be measured independently of other channels. Now, my premise today is that these myths block us from properly valuing the role and the impact of social media in the marketing mix. So we have to understand them and then dispel them so that we can move forward. The first myth is that measuring likes and followers equals ROI. Now, one of the beauties of social media being in online digital venues that create permanent digital trails is that there is a lot of data. There's a lot of data that can be easily converted into numbers. And so we see things like how many likes you have, how many followers you have, how many fans that you have. Now, what happens, these are what I call activity metrics. These are things that consumers do or marketers do that they can count easily. And because social media venues make them so convenient, marketers fall into what I call a quantitative fiction. They use these numbers based on convenience, thinking that they actually mean something. Now, there is some value to these. It does help you to understand that, did we increase the number of followers? Did we increase the number of fans? Did we increase engagement with our consumer base? But if the goal is to answer the ROI and to understand, is this a channel or an initiative or an opportunity that's worth investing in, you will be misguided by focusing on these. Okay? So I want to dispel us of this quantitative fiction. The reality is that you have to focus on your business goals. And for most businesses, there are very simple goals. Your goal is to either increase revenue and or to deflect costs and or to move brand perceptions and preference because they will help you to increase revenue. Okay? Very simple things. And we heard the theme of kind of getting back to basics earlier, and this is a very back to basics type of thing. So what I want to do now is to show you 3 concrete examples of companies, larger and smaller, who have looked at social media marketing initiatives. And what they've done is made the shift from just focusing on activity metrics, counting the activities of their consumers, and shifting into value metrics. The first example that I'm going to talk about is in a US example called Cumberland Farms. They're a US convenience store retailer. They took over some of the Shell oil company gas stations, and they sell food and items and things in convenience stores. And what they wanted to do, they engaged a marketing agency to help them build a Facebook fan community. And the program that they wanted to do was to activate this Facebook fan community. Now, what they did is they had a drink. They had this section of their stores called the Chill Zone, where you can go in and buy carbonated beverages. You can buy different things, kind of like slushies or Slurpees and those type of thing, kind of frozen drinks. And what they wanted to do was they were suffering really from poor foot traffic into their stores. They needed a way to get people into their stores and people who they knew really could like the products and then advocate on behalf of it. So what they did is they wanted to leverage their Facebook fan community, which started out at about 7,000 fans, and they wanted to grow that, not just to grow it for growing its sake, but to get people out there using their products, and advocating about it and getting people in the store. So they launched a series of challenges. So this was a promotion challenge type of a program, where they said, if we can get 100,000 fans to increase for our Facebook community, everybody gets a free Chill Zone drink. Okay? And so they did this, ended up going 3 different times, and they ended up growing their fan base up to 150,000. But more importantly, they got people coming into the store for them to not only get their free chilled drink, but also then to buy other things in the convenience store. What they were able to do was, for the first contest or challenge that they did, they were able to attribute 50% of the sales to Facebook because of either coupon redemptions or some type of promotional code that they used. And they were able to determine that the ROI from the sales from that foot traffic led to a 228% ROI. Okay, so this is the first example of a company that was able to not focus just on activity metrics of growing their fan book base or their Facebook fan base, but then also translating that into concrete bottom line success. The second one is a small company that you might know called Microsoft. They were interested, this is their online business group, and they, as many companies are in the tech space and just in general, overwhelmed by the large amount of cost that it is to support their user base. As you might know, it costs quite a bit for people who have problems with the products to call in for phone support. It can be up to 70 cents US dollars a minute, for example. Email is a little bit cheaper. What they found is that there was a large group of people who were very active and passionate about their products. They were able to build an online community to support their advocates, who then answered questions for the rest of the peers and the rest of the community members. Now, their advocate base was a very small portion, less than 1%, less than half of 1%. And they were responsible for answering about over 40% of the questions in that community. This principle of a very small group of active, committed people is something that we'll touch base in a little bit. What they found is by having this advocate community and driving people to these page views, they were able to increase those page views by 77% and increase the community answer rate by 54%, meaning the number of community members who answered the questions as opposed to Microsoft. Now that's great, sounds great, but again, those are still activity metrics. They were then able to translate that into dollar savings by looking at what was the cost of deflecting costs. So this is a cost deflection exercise of deflecting costs from that 68 cents for the phone support down to the 24 cents that it costs to support by having pure community support. And so that led to a 283% decrease in hard dollar customer support costs. The third one is a company called Adidas, or Adidas if you're in the US. This was an example from a few years ago, but it's important to understand here. So we've got revenue here. We've got, for the first example with Cumberland Farms, the second example we have of cost deflection, saving costs, and the third example is about driving brand preference. And what they did is they created an area of their site where they created a contest when they were launching their Adidas soccer or football cleats, or boots, depending on where you're from. What they wanted to do is they created 2 teams and had people identify with the 2 teams and then kind of go and challenge each other about which was the better shoe, which was the better team. And they allowed them to download logos and different things and avatars that would allow them to identify themselves in such a way as affiliated with one of these teams. And what they were able to do was drive a lot of page views for this particular branded site. Now, what was important about that is that most of the traffic initially they thought was going to come just from the advertising support that they were going to put behind to drive people to the site, to kind of engage in this. But it turns out that over 70% of the traffic came from peer recommendations and sharing behavior that drove people to the site. So what they found was if you just relied on the cost, the direct cost of the direct advertising effect to influence purchase intent of the consumers who visited the site, it cost $1.87 per consumer to influence them. But because of that peer recommendation effect, they were able to decrease that cost to influence one consumer in purchase intent to 40 cents. So it dropped from 187 to 40 by adding in this very strong social sharing element. So that's our first myth, is that measuring likes and followers equals ROI. What we need to do is we need to break that quantitative fiction, shift from activity metrics, and focus on value metrics. The second one is that calculating ROI is the same for social. And I've started to allude to this in my first point. First of all, let's take a step back, and look at the ROI formula. This is tried and true. Again, back to basics. ROI is a very simple formula, anyway. It's gain minus cost divided by cost. Very straightforward. The challenge is in calculating the gain. Cost can be a little tricky sometimes, but really the hard part when it comes to social is how do you calculate the gain? Now, marketers are used to thinking about direct effects for media because of TV, print, out of home, radio, digital. We're always thinking about how can I influence my audience to think differently about my brand and to go out and buy my brand. And that's how they use to calculate the gain. How many people can I shift in brand perceptions, or how many people can I get to go out and buy my product? What they're not thinking about is the network effect. And that's what social is really good at. So with social, you get the added benefit of not just affecting that individual, that direct person individually, but if you can help influence them in such a way that inspires them to share it, then it's an exponential increase. And in fact, the impact of that direct person into the overall calculation is almost insignificant when it comes to a financial valuation, because the value is really from how much they're able to influence. And it's really in their network, that buying behavior, that's really what drives the value. And I'll show you a little bit about that in a study. So what we did is, we collect data. We're based in Boston in the United States, by the way. And so our focus is really focusing on kind of word of mouth and social media programs in the context of your whole entire marketing mix. So the full 360-degree view of how consumers encounter their brands and how that drives purchase behavior. Now, we did a study. We looked at a lot of our programs in 5 different industries: food and beverage, CPG, retail, technology, and QSR, quick service restaurants, on 5 continents, 30-plus client engagements. What we found is when you look at the ROI, 80% of the value for the ROI comes from this network amplification effect. Only about 20%, and sometimes even less than 20%, is driven by those direct people who initially encounter either your TV ad or your community site or whatever. It's really the value that they bring from sharing that behavior. So that's huge. So the issue here is if you are not incorporating them into your ROI calculations, then you're completely undervaluing what social can do for you. Okay, great. We know intuitively, yeah, social, sharing, okay, it shares with others and they go and come, but how do we measure that? Oops. So what I want to do is give you an example. We've done a series of programs for an online community for moms in the United States. They have about 9 million unique monthly visitors. And a lot of their programs involve finding an engaged group of moms within the community who want to experience more about a product. They invite the brands into their community, allow them to create an experience for the moms. The moms receive a free product, they go out and buy it, they get backstage information about how the product was made, et cetera, and then they're invited to blog about it within a sponsored site of the community. Then the community goes out and drives traffic from all over the web and from within their community to these consumer-generated pages. Now, what our job is at ChatThreads is to go out and find out, does this make a difference? Is this bringing value to the brand, to their bottom line? So the way that we measure this network amplification effect is in what we call generations. So we look at generations or ripples or threads. We heard about it with the Google ripples, for example. So generation 0 is the people who are initially impacted. So these are the people who come to the sponsored website and read the blog post. Then we measure their sharing behavior to that next generation. That's generation 1, and then also to the next generation, generation 2. And we look at what the impact is on their brand perceptions and their purchase behavior. And for CPG products, retail, we're looking at a period of 30 days. And we look at people who are exposed to this over that 30 days and what their behavior is. Then we recruit a control group of people who match that test group, the exposed group, and we follow them for 30 days as well. And then we're able to isolate then the impact of this particular social media initiative and show then lift over and above the control group, which factors out everything else that the brand might be doing and going on in the environment. So what we see here is that the community was able to drive just over 687,000 people to these sponsored pages. Those people, on average, told just under 3 people, generating, and these are unique people. We don't have time to explain, but we factor out what we call social network overlap, people talking with others who are talking to the same people. So these are unique people, that just under 2 million people. Those 2 million, on average, go out and speak to about just 1.4 others. It's very common to see a decay of 3 to 1.4, et cetera. When you add up the numbers in those white bubbles, you get to 5.3 million people that this program ultimately reached. That's over and above the level of word of mouth and sharing behavior that already existed. Now what we're able to do is when we know how many people were reached, we're able then to also track purchase behavior at each of those generations. So we know that, sorry, the numbers are a little hard to read. About 16% of those people, those Generation Zero, those people who are directly exposed, went out and purchased the product for the first time. Of those people who were exposed to the conversation or the recommendation, received the recommendation, about 11% of them at Generation 1 went out and purchased for the first time. And then in Generation 2, just under 5% purchased for the first time. So if you add up those numbers in the white bubbles, you get 448,710 purchases that we can attribute to this campaign because we've isolated out all the other things that are going on, price promotions in store, other media and marketing initiatives. Now what we do is we enter that into our ROI model. And we're able to look at, because these are first-time purchasers, we can look at the value of their purchase immediately after this program, within 30 days, but then also what would take place over the next year. Okay? A certain percent of them are going to go and become repeat customers, and then they're going to make purchases. You look at their profit per unit. You look at their purchase frequency, and then you apply a discount rate, time value of money. Money in your pocket now is worth more than money later. And we're able to determine what the profitability of that program is. $458,000 that was generated. But it cost the company $175,000 to invest in this. So that generates an ROI with those additional one-year purchases of 162%. Or if you factored out those, if you said, you know what, I don't want to add in those extra one-year purchases. Let's just look at the purchases that took place around those 30 days. It'd be 111%. So for every $1 the brand spent, it's earning $1.62 back in net profit over the course of a year. So this is a way of using very tried and true methods, research methods that may not sound very sexy, but they're sexy in the sense that there's something new about them that you can do. You can track this generational, this network amplification effect. You're able to isolate the impact of your social media program. Now the third myth that I want to talk about is that social media is isolated in its measurement from other media. Now this isn't by design. Marketers don't get in a room and say, I want to just measure social media independently from other media. It's just that marketers, we don't know, it's fairly new, we're not sure how to do it, so let's focus on what we can do. And so you focus just on one channel. But really what we think is, you have to understand holistically how all your media and marketing initiatives are working together. And the mentality that undergirds this is that there's a difficulty in measuring both above the line and below the line marketing initiatives. And so what we've done is we started out with that kind of first methodology that I just described to you about what's the impact of that particular program. And we had worked with great brands, and they said, you know, this is great, but we're doing everything else as well. We're doing TV, we're doing print, we're doing out of home, we've got retail promotions going on. We're giving away samples. How are all of these things working together holistically? So a little over a year and a half ago, we developed a unique new methodology that uses mobile phones to track how people are coming into contact with a particular brand and up to 4 competitors. Using their mobile devices, they tell us each time they come into contact with those brands what brand it was, what touch point it was, so whether it was TV, word of mouth recommendation, Facebook post, etc., and the quality of their experience. They can attach pictures, they can attach notes to it. And we also can follow up with them. Purchase or consumption is another touch point, just like the others. They tell us what they've purchased or what they've consumed. We follow up with them for a period of 30 days. We can integrate with loyalty cards to track their purchases beyond that. So when we have what they purchased, and we also have the touch points that they were exposed to, then through the magic of regression analysis and other methods, we can isolate the impact of which touch point or combination of touch points is driving that purchase behavior. So we did a study, actually partnering with Ogilvy. They commissioned the study, and we worked together on it for the quick service restaurant category in the United States. It included 5 brands: Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Subway, Taco Bell, and Wendy's. We looked at these brands individually, and then we looked for the whole category. It used our brand encounter platform, which I just described, which is the real-time capture of brand encounters via mobile or a companion web browser button. We measure pre and post before they start. They're with us for a period of 7 days. It's rolling recruitment. We're tracking continuously throughout the period. And so we know what their perceptions were beforehand and what their usage behavior was beforehand, and then what it was after the 7 days. During those 7 days, we know everything that they came into contact with because they're telling us about it through their mobile phone in real time. So even though it's self-report, it's highly accurate because they're telling us about it in real time. They don't have to remember. It reduces recall bias. And we have all kinds of validation studies I can talk with you about to show that what they're saying is actually what's happening. Now, what we did is we went out and we recruited people who recently visited a quick service restaurant, that are active on social media within the past 30 days. And then we also recruited a subgroup that were a brand fan or follower. So this is very important. We had people who were very active as brand fans and followers, and then just other people who were active on social media but weren't fans and followers. Because one of the things that we found with existing research is that Facebook fans spend more. Well, yeah, there's a reason why they're Facebook fans, probably because they're more inclined to the brand already. So it's not surprising that they spend more than non-Facebook fans. But that doesn't tell us that social media is driving that, right? So you're confusing the chicken for the egg there. So what we have to do is we have to factor that out. So we have to have people who are Facebook fans and who aren't, or fans or Twitter followers or whatever the networking or site is. We recruited 400 participants on a rolling 7-day basis. We captured over 5,600 touch points during January and May of last year. This is the type of data that we get. Like for social media examples, for example, oh, there was a Wendy's Facebook post on my wall. The burger looks good. Just a friendly reminder that our burgers are made with 100% pure, blah, blah, blah. So this is a brand message from Facebook. There's someone else that a consumer saw that. One consumer read another consumer's review. This person here really loves KFC and goes there weekly. People reading a blog post, people seeing a Facebook friend status. But importantly, we're also tracking all of the other ways, store visits, TV ads, out of home, which is big for quick service restaurants. And we're capturing all this data holistically. And we're not privileging, they don't know that we're looking and interested in tracking the impact of social media here. They just know there's 5 brands, and anytime they see, touch, hear, smell them, to let us know about it. And they don't know who's sponsoring the research, et cetera. So we're capturing all this data, and what we're able to find when we looked at brand perceptions was that people who are experiencing Kentucky Fried Chicken social media touch points demonstrated a 250% increase in their perception that Kentucky Fried Chicken is a great dining experience. When we look at brand favorability, we see a 5x increase for McDonald's. People who are exposed to McDonald's social media touchpoints increase 5 times over the change in people not exposed. Importantly, we're not saying that people who are already Facebook fans or Twitter followers had 5 times the lift as non-followers. We're saying we've already factored that out, and we're saying people who were exposed to a touchpoint during that time had that 5 times lift. The perception, there's a 45% lift in the best value for the money for McDonald's. Then we also saw not everything works well via social media, and Taco Bell experienced that. In fact, there was a 220% decrease in the perception that Taco Bell provides a great dining experience. If you're from the US, and this did travel a little bit outside the US as well, but there was concerns and questions about the ingredients that Taco Bell uses in its products, and is it actual meat, and what's the percentage of actual meat composition, and that there's a lot of PR stories and things that were shared via social media and traditional outlets, and we did see during this time we happened to be tracking that there was quite a big decrease. So social media can be a force for helping the brand and also hurting the brand. Now, so that was brand perceptions. We also looked at the impact on sales. And we were able to find that when social was combined with PR, we saw a 17% increase in the category spend. Okay, so people who are exposed to both social media and PR increased their spend 17%. We also saw, for people who were exposed to social and out of home, 1.5 times greater likelihood and increase in spend of consumption. So basically, we looked at people who increased their spend in the amount that they spent and people who didn't, and what best explained that. And people who saw social and out of home had a greater likelihood of being in the group that actually increased their spend. We also saw a 2x greater likelihood of increase in consumption for a specific brand, for Wendy's, when they saw a Wendy's TV ad and also were exposed to social media touchpoints, and a 7x greater likelihood in increase in consumption for KFC based on their exposure to social. So what's really important here is to understand that sometimes social works in isolation, but the majority of our findings is that social is working and driving impact, both brand perceptions and also sales, when it's in concert with, in combination with your other media and marketing channels. So at this point, I'm at the end of my talk, and I just want to focus on 3 takeaways. The first is that you need to focus on your bottom line business goals and metrics that are driving value, bottom line value for your company. It's important to look at, well, you can look at activity metrics. It might be important to look at things like engagement to help diagnostic problems, to help understand how can we better engage and create relationships. But ultimately, if you're looking to calculate ROI, you have to get to those bottom line metrics so that, because we're in a competitive situation, to understand where should we invest our marketing dollars. I'm not going to just invest marketing dollars in social media because it sounds like it's a good idea. We have to have reasons to do that, okay? And using these principles that I'm talking about today give us the reason for investing in it or not investing in it and how we should invest in it. The second takeaway is that ROI is ROI is ROI. The calculation has been around for a very long time, and we still should keep that calculation. So you should still apply the same standards that you have in terms of accountability to social media as you should for other media and marketing channels, okay? The thing is, you have to properly value it. And so you have to understand what that network amplification effect is. And there are ways to do it. It's been done. You can do it as well. Third is you have to measure social media's value in the context of your full marketing and media mix. If you don't, you are going to be consistently undervaluing the role of social media because you're going to miss out on its interaction effects with everything else that you're doing. Okay, that's it. That's my dog and pony show.
Walter, thank you very much, Walter. You've done something that is quite remarkable. You've managed to keep a room full of people despite talking about social media ROI. Excellent. Which is a tremendous thing. Everybody says, when we were polling people about what the topics we should have, everybody said, number one, social media ROI. Whenever we do webinars every few months with the Wall Street Journal, our team, every time we do webinars on social media ROI, we get few people turning up despite their supposed interest in it. And we've had a few questions from the audience as well. Sarah was asking, okay, this is all fine and well what you've shown. A lot of these are very big brands, big companies. What about a small to medium-sized enterprise? What is affordable social media measurement?
Yep, that's a great question. So Cumberland Farms certainly is, it's not a huge brand. It's not like a Microsoft or an Adidas or Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's, et cetera. So it's a, but it's a larger brand. There's still things that you can do. What I would focus on is going back to basic research. So you bring your marketing research people and your analytics team back in the room and have a serious discussion about basic research principles. Test, exposed, and control. Pre and post. You set up your research design in advance and you're able to isolate the impact. You have to start with what your business goal is. You bring your research and analytics people into the room early on before you even start designing whatever you're going to be doing, whether it's a short-term campaign or a longer-term initiative, and you get them to build in, you have to bake in the research up front. You can't just add it on at the end or think about it as an afterthought after it's already happened. Sometimes you can do it, but the majority of the time, you have to bake it in up front, and then you can properly set it up so that you can isolate the impact.
Another question coming in from Jonathan was, what portion of companies, how many companies are doing measurement right? And the secondary question, you just tweeted another one, which is, are companies afraid to do it, or are people afraid to do it because they fear that, the tide will go out and you see who's wearing a swimsuit?
Yes. To be honest, I don't know the first one. I could make up a number, but I'd just be making it up. I don't know.
Is anybody doing it right? How many people are doing it right?
I think there's pockets of people who are doing it right, and it's people who are committed to understanding and giving it a fair share and say, look, we've got to understand this. Let's figure out how to do it. And we see, large brands like Kraft or Coca-Cola or Microsoft and smaller brands who are doing it as well. So there are people who are doing it. They're not doing it consistently, and they're not doing it in their full integrated way. So I think it's very few brands that are actually doing it.
What are the lessons we can learn from those people who are doing it right? What have they done to make ROI a priority and doing this measurement? Because as I said, in this room, everybody says this is the #1 topic, which is why, please note, we have very few presentations, but we dedicated one presentation to this topic because it was so key. What can the people in this room do to get ROI paid attention to or get the budget towards it?
So what you have to do is you have to take away the mystique of social media. It's got this huge mystique about it, like, well, it sounds great, it's very intuitive, it seems like it would work, but we really don't know how to measure it. And so if you can't measure it, for most marketers and finance people, you can't understand it. So the first principle is you have to get your marketers talking with your finance people. And so the biggest thing I can tell you about this, it's really organizationally. You've got to bring your finance person into the room early on and have a serious discussion about this and say, what metrics are you held accountable for? And what should we be doing? What should we be focusing on? And then working with them collaboratively. We've done this with very large brands, and we get their buy-in with the finance people. And once you have the finance person buying in that the approach that you're taking, that you're on board and they sign off on it, you're incredibly far ahead of the game. Because then they take that to the boss, and then your CMO or your CFO is going to say, have you talked to Jay about this? And Jay comes in the room and says, yes, I've signed off on this. And now you can move forward and have the credibility of the results. But you've got to get marketing and finance talking to each other.
Okay, excellent. So as with so much with social media, it's about reaching across these barriers within organizations that are existing and finding the way to speak the language of the person who's on the other side.
That's right.
So fascinating research. Thank you very much, Walter, and thank you for flying all the way out from the United States for today. If anybody is interested in Walter's research, tweet out that you would like a copy of the research, and we will tell you some of the studies that he's done are very, very interesting. We'd love to share that with everybody.
Yeah, there's the study that we did on the QSR study, and also the Word of Mouth Marketing Association added a volume on solving the ROI riddle. I can give you the link where you can download that volume, which has a number of case studies across your top social media venues and how you measure each of those marketing initiatives.
Great. Thank you very much, Walter.